Been using law of attraction for a long time, and I've been seeing the result. And actually,
It's fun, as you say, you've been using it because you can't not using it. That's like saying, I use gravity every day. But what you do mean is you're consciously aware of its effects. And so that you are more deliberately guiding your thoughts and noticing results. That's really good.
yes,
Yeah.
for a long time, and I'm strongly on with the law of attraction. But recently, since 3 months ago, I started doing meditation and talking to myself in terms of calling my inner being a name. I put a name. It's like, hey, Mike. And I start to talk, right? And
This is good in that it means that you are expecting this relationship and you are listening for the response. That's a good thing.
yes, and it's really good because the conversation I have in my, I feel it's like 10 minutes, but I'm like 2 hours. Actually, one time I had pain in my neck because in 2 hours, so it's really good. But after I'm coming out of it, I feel really strong. But then the part that I hate about is this part, that I start thinking, okay, you're crazy, you're talking to yourself. And then I was like, no, you are crazy because you're seeing the result. So the thing is, I think I'm like 3 different things. It's my inner being, it's me as a person who is like, I just observe, and it's the other guy that's like, you're crazy. So I'm constantly on this fight, and I don't like it. Sometimes I hate it. So
here you are, talking to us.
yes, exactly. So the question I have,
We know.
yeah, so
We know because other humans want you to face reality. And reality does not include something that you cannot see. And so here we are giving you a message of this larger part of you. Most people do have a sense that they came from something. And most people do believe or hope that they will return to something. You just can't look around this manifestation of this world without acknowledging that there's more to it than you all. You're wise and you're brilliant and you're beautiful, but you have not figured out how to scrape enough dirt together and launch it into orbit and create another planet. You are limited in what you can do with only your physicality. And yet here you are, the witnesser of so much more. So when you take the time to quiet your mind, which means you quiet your fears and you quiet maybe what you're wanting to call all those rational thoughts, a lot of people would say to you, those are perfectly rational thoughts. But when you quiet them and you allow yourself a connection with that broader part of you, and you begin to experience a fuller sensation of who you really are, then and only then do you understand that you're not crazy. Esther had an interesting unfolding into this because she was married to a man who had so much desire for answers to his questions that he'd gathered for a long while. So when through meditation she experienced this connection with us, she couldn't explain it. She just knew that it happened and it was strong and it was powerful and she sensed it was good. She didn't know for sure. She sensed it was good because of the way it felt. But because of her trust in Jerry and because of his eagerness about this process, she relaxed and allowed the evolution of Abraham within her to the point that she could, through meditation and through quieting her mind, she was able to allow her vibration to rise to the point of being in the receptive mode of us. And right from the beginning, we began flowing with quite clear conversation. And Jerry was so happy about it because he was getting what felt to him like valid answers to very valid questions. Esther couldn't tell because when she's in the receiving mode, it feels to her like everything that's being said she already knows. After a seminar like today, they would get into their room or get into the car on the way somewhere, and Jerry would then take his notes out and begin going through the list of the amazing discoveries that had happened in this one day. And he would say to Esther, how did it feel to you? And Esther would say, it was sort of like talking about what we were going to have for lunch. It didn't have the impact on Esther that it had on Jerry because Esther was in the receiving mode. So we've been saying to our physical friends a lot, we're in the place that you are, where you are beginning to acknowledge that there is more than of this physical realm, that you know that you have an inner being, that there is a source of consciousness that is aware of you and flowing to you. And you begin to develop this desire to listen and hear and benefit by that relationship. Once you're in that place where you are actually having those personal experience of expansion and evolution, then and only then will you really know. But the thing that is important for that to take place in the full way that you're reaching for it and in the full way that Esther and others have discovered it, you have to put some separation between your asking of the question and your receiving of the answer, or you end up confused like that. You have to put some time separation because the vibration of the question and the vibration of the answer are different. And if you're all balled up with the question, even though the answer is available to you, you cannot receive it. Your doubt comes from cluttered reception. You will not feel that way when you come into alignment with who you really are. When you find resonance with your source, you don't doubt that your source exists. You feel it. You can feel the clarity and the power of it. And so, yes, you're asking questions from a place of not knowing. That's what step one is. And yes, you're receiving answers from a place of alignment. That's what step two is. But it is not schizophrenia, and it is not being crazy. It's having two different vibrational vantage points, and it helps to understand that those two exist. In the early days, Esther would come to a gathering like this, and she was always glad to see you. Sometimes there were 20 or 30 of you. This group has grown a bit here in this room. And so Jerry would watch Esther interacting with others, and sometimes people would come to her during a segment of refreshment or before the seminar was beginning, and they would ask Esther a question as if she were Abraham. And Jerry would stand in the background, and he'd stand over it, and he would say, ask Abraham, because he knew that Esther, while she was learning, was not in that moment tuned in with this clarity, and he didn't want them to take Esther as Abraham, and nor did Esther. He used to say, I'm going to make you a sign. On one side it will say Esther, and on the other side it will say Abraham, and you will always wear it so people will know who they are talking to. Well, Esther's pretty sure you know. Esther's pretty sure that you can feel when Abraham is flowing through her. Everyone who knows her knows. It's not hard to know when you are in the receiving mode and when you are not. But just because sometimes you're not sure, do not discount the process. Do not call yourself crazy. Just acknowledge sometimes you're tuned in and sometimes you're not, and you are an entirely different person. When you're not tuned in, you might be ornery, you might be negative, you might be hateful, you might be revengeful, you might be paranoid, you might be unsure of yourself. When you're tuned into source energy, when you've meditated yourself into alignment with who you really are, you're loving and you're clear and you're sure and you're confident and you're in love with life, you see. And we don't know who that third guy is you were describing.
So it should just be clear, I should just be patient and doing this to find that line.
Feel your way to it. Don't try to think your way to it so much. You know the basics. Only well-being can come from it. What's the problem with seeking joy? We know it's a terrible price to pay for alignment, but what's the problem with that? And once you find it, really, what's the downside of clarity? What's the downside of love? What's the downside of knowing who you are? There is no disadvantage that can come to you through aligning with who you are. And you will come to know who you are so clearly that you'll reach the place that it will shock you when you're not in that kind of alignment. Enough?
Yes, one more.
Yes?
That will be fast. So earlier you talked about going forward with life. Inner being wants to go forward, not looking at past. But
it's where all the power is. It's where all the juice is. It's where all the fun is. It's where all the new is. It's where all the discovery is. It's where all the adventure is. It's where all the passion is.
Exactly. But some feelings are really strong, like love. And some people have, including me, I personally experienced love with a person, and it didn't happen, like we didn't end up together, right? So that feeling is strong, but I'm telling myself, okay, let's move forward. But it's like the first time you had ice cream, you always remember that ice cream, but you're always going to have ice cream. But the first time was the time that you remember, this is ice cream.
All right, stop right there and let's talk about this, because this matters a lot. This is a very good analogy that you were offering here, and here's why. What you're talking about is the comparative relationship that you are having. And so, while you like to be delighted and you like things that taste good and you've had things that taste good, and let's say you haven't had ice cream, but there is a desire to be satisfied, and then you have ice cream. And you're right. That first movement from not having a manifestation of something and then experiencing a manifestation of something, that's really a wonderful, wonderful thing. But what we really want you to consider, there's so much in just that analogy. There's so much we want you to consider. That very memory of not having it and then having it is what causes humans to not be willing to enjoy the evolution along the way. What if on your way to ice cream, let's just pretend that you weren't little when you got your first ice cream, that it just happened yesterday. And let's talk about the evolution of what might have brought it along, the people that you might have met, and the willingness that you might have had to participate in it. In other words, a lot happens vibrationally before it explodes into the manifestation of ice cream in your mouth. But most humans don't take into account the knowing what they didn't want, knowing what they did want, the evolution of the process, the gestation of it, the law of attraction bringing more to it, and the delivery system being all wind up. Most people don't take into account that there was a creation that existed before they ate the ice cream, that there was something delicious before they even got it in their mouth. Most people don't even want to acknowledge that something is delicious until they are translating it with their physical senses. And that's what trips you up so much. If you can feel the deliciousness of feeling a little better, the deliciousness of some clarity coming to you, the deliciousness of a feeling of certainty and empowerment, the deliciousness of having an impulse to go somewhere, and the deliciousness of rendezvousing with someone who says, I'd like to take you someplace special, and puts ice cream in your hand for you to put in your mouth. But there were a lot of delicious things that happened along the way before that manifestation happens. And most people aren't willing to allow those things along the way. They just want to go straight to the ice cream, and when they don't go straight there, then they assume that there's something wrong with them, or that there's something wrong with the system, or that there's something wrong with creating in general. You see what we're getting at? And another way of looking at the ice cream, and this is another important part that we want to give to you, is that because you were, like most, so humanly focused and not paying so much attention to molding your energy and contouring your energy and holding yourself in a good place, so you have no real sense of how things come to you. When something good happens, you say, oh, good. And when something not good happens, you say, oh, bad. But most people do not have any real sense that they attracted it. It's attraction, 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 attraction. So when that first ice cream came to you, when that first experience of that ice cream came to you, there was more distance between where you had been and where you were now than there can ever be again, because you cannot ever have not tasted ice cream. There was a time when you'd never tasted it, and you tasted it, and that felt like a big gap that was closed. But there's never again going to be another gap like that, and that's why you want to keep looking forward. Ice cream is back. Ice cream is like the gum that you've chewed the flavor out of. But there is so much more that's in your vortex that is in the process of becoming, and that will be those first time manifestations for you. You see what we're getting at? Helpful?
Yes, a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.